So welcome back to Channel Chats, everybody. I'm so excited today to be interviewing the wonderful Phil Mayer from Microsoft, industry legend, industry tycoon, I might say, Phil, and also a dear friend of me. So Phil, how are you, mate?
I am very well. As you may know, I'm just back from holidays. We London to go and see the grandchildren, and then off to Italy, southern Italy, Giro Italia, and we have our connection of bikes, of course, Brad, and then off to Greece for Easter. So yeah, feeling good.
Geez, really tough. You guys do it really tough at Microsoft, mate. How's the family?
Family's well, they're all healthy. The twins here in Sydney are healthy. We saw them for pizzas on Sunday night. Gosh, the rain, mate, you got absolutely hammered up your way. We got hammered here on Sunday.
We did, yeah. It was that heavy. It was actually quite entertaining. The local street got flooded, trees down everywhere. It was insane. Now, thank you for making the time to chat to our channel. As you know, here at Channel Guru, we're all about practical help, practical guides, and really echoing the voice of the channel. So, what's happening? What's happening in the tech partner space?
Ooh, that's a short question with many long answers. So I will look to you to cut me off at the right times, please, Brad, because I know I am known for waffling. First, let's say CSP. There's some big announcements that were made on May 1st about that. And we want to make sure the channel is completely aware of all those announcements. Things like three-year SKUs coming out, increases in promos around Copilot, also some new requirements coming in. And that's probably also worth a deep dive into some of the new minimum bars for being a distributor, for being a direct partner. And that security score has created a lot. So that's the first topic. Second topic, it's Build Week. So we've had a very busy morning here listening to the keynote by Satya. And there's so much in there. Again, you better cut me off because there's a whole lot of stuff in the book of news around enhancements to Copilot, agentic world, things we're doing at the infrastructure level with new technologies, interviews with Elon Musk, with Jensen Huang from NVIDIA, with Sam Altman, the Mr. OpenAI. All that was part of the keynote very early this morning, so I'm a bit weary. It was a 2 a.m. start.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I did notice so. So for those of you who are watching this interview, if we get it out in time, Build is on this week, but you can go and sign up onto their website and do virtual Build at any time you want and go back and watch that content. It's amazing. So let's come back to that CSP stuff because, the blog post that Nicole Deason put out was very much talking about investments, but there was some significant changes mentioned in there from a qualification to be a indirect provider, what we call CSP DISI, indirect provider, or to be a direct CSP. Can you share any more detail on that?
Oh, yeah. So I'm testing my memory here. Minimum requirements going for, let's talk CSP direct first of all.
Yeah.
There's about, 170 in Australia at the moment, CSP direct.
170?
170, 170. 174, I think the number went up slightly the other day.
It was about that when I left Microsoft, so it's very close.
Quite a bit of interest in solidifying in that space as this new requirement, 300,000 going to 1 million trailing 12 months in the revenue requirement, trailing 12 months. Now that is actually treated at a global level. So if you're a CSP direct and you have a global relationship, you're okay. It's a little bit different to our distributors, to our indirect providers, where their number is now moving out to 30 million by regional authorization. So that's putting a bit of pressure on some, I won't mention who, in various countries. And it is a country number. So you think about New Zealand, love New Zealand. It's not as big as Australia. But you've got the same 30 million bar in New Zealand as you've got in Australia, as you have in North America. So there's no regional consideration in that. And feedback we've had from the minders is, well, it's the same number of distributors based on population count. So there might be a few in New Zealand and there might be more in America, but then America is, 350 million at the moment versus New Zealand sitting about 5, Australia sitting 26, we're about to pass 28 million actually. So we'll probably end up, I would think, about the same number we have in Australia today at that 30 million mark. You're probably
It's so significant, right? So you and I probably know some of the numbers on the back end here, which we won't really disclose in this conversation, but it will mean that a whole bunch of those direct CSPs who transact directly with Microsoft in Australia and or New Zealand or anywhere around the world will need to transition back into an indirect provider relationship if they don't meet that threshold, right?
If they don't meet the threshold, from what I've seen from speaking to probably about 30 or 40 of them so far, they are actually saying we are going to consolidate on our direct agreement. So the majority have said they've had a direct agreement, but they've been using a little bit of X and a little bit of Y and a little bit of Z.
Ooh,
so instead of doing that, they're going to bring that back in to purely being a direct model. Some, you're quite right, aren't going to make that bar. And so they will go to X, Y, and Z distributors in Australia, indirect providers in Australia, because they just can't make that bar. It's a bit of a mix in terms of strengthening their direct versus I can't make that bar, I'll go.
Interesting. So it's quite a bit of a possibly disruption or change in the channel, right? So you said you're proactively out there speaking to these partners. Are there other things that Microsoft is doing to help partners, transition through this change?
We do. With the direct partner community, we have a regular forum, a monthly forum, and just in the last 2 weeks, they've had a CSP partner community call. And when you were here, how frustrating it was 1 a.m. in the morning. But it is recorded, pretty much overnight available for them. And we've also had CSP technical training. Now, it's not for all the channels. So everybody listening, these sessions are not necessarily for you. If you are what we call a direct bill partner, which is a CSP direct who's going to have to hit a mill, or a CSP indirect provider, which we'll start to call a CSP direct, a distributor going forward, they should be attending and probably are attending those calls to be aware and communicate with us and us to learn from them. Been a bit of kickback. Listen to some of the recordings.
No doubt.
Quite colourful language that comes out from some of the partners, notably around security, the passing security score. Right. I was surprised at that. I would have thought the channel, our listeners, would be passionate about ensuring the security of their customer tenants. And that's the interesting change. That requirement for security score above 80 is now being pushed to the customer tenant. You might recall some years ago we went through a process of ensuring a partner tenant. They had to have things like MFA and a bunch of other baseline securities. That was a big project we went through with our distributors and direct channel. Now we're pushing that to our channel to impose. Wow. I don't know the right words, impose. I think it would be educate the value of things like multi-factor authentication on their customers. And there will be some pushback. So I call on you as a channel to educate them on the importance of having simple multi-factor authentication to prevent 99.9% of attacks that could occur against their business. But still, we get some who complain, Brad.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think tech partners, it's a very difficult business, right? And so it probably just feels like yet another thing they need to do. Whilst I'm sure their intent will be righteous and to support their customers. Whilst with my time at Microsoft, and you would know plenty of these stories, and now whilst, as part of Channel Guru, we still see tech partners and their customers attacked continually. And some with very significant impacts to them, not just to the profession, to the business, but to the directors inside those businesses. And so, if you need to help, Phil Me's only one guy, but, reach out to the team at Microsoft if you need help or your distributors, because, we've got to raise the standards as an industry, as a community. So let's change paths a little bit. We've done a little bit of the initial kind of update. What is one thing, you and I have had a bit of a long history, Phil. We once did a famous thing together. What was that thing that we did, that unique activity we did?
We rode a bike.
We rode a bike? Just one?
Well, there were about 30 or 40 in the pack, and we were groups of 10, and we rode from Perth to Sydney. I hope that's the one you're thinking of, because I think that's probably the most significant thing we did together, was riding a push bike from Perth to Sydney in the thoughts of Beyond Blue, mental health. And we know in recent media there's been some very sad tales. If we look at Adam Selwood, not all of you are AFL players, but there was a brothers of four, and a number of those brothers have passed through suicide. So I think that was a very worthy cause, and we all need to bear in mind that these can be stressful times. Even our work lives, our family lives, or sporting lives can be stressful. And I think it was admirable the work we did to raise a good amount of money for Beyond Blue in that ride. Can you believe that's 12 years ago?
I was just thinking, Phil, I can't remember the exact date. I do have a news article, but my local newspaper, the Express Advocate here on the Central Coast of New South Wales, put me on, I think it was on the front page of the paper. Somehow, I don't even know how it came about, but me in the tight shorts and the bike. Fun fact, Phil, I actually got back on my bike just recently, so I'm back cycling again. Trying to keep it safe out there. It can be a dangerous occupation. You talked a little bit about mental health. I want to go into a little bit about resilience, with a bit of a spin on this kind of question. So one of the things that amazes me about you is your ability to be super resilient and super impactful whilst doing a very similar job over a very long period of time, right? And you are just, as I said earlier, no one will be too, but you're an icon in the industry. You always stay up with technology, and you've been doing something similar for 30 plus years now at Microsoft. So how is it that you remain fresh and energized and excitement? Because we've got a younger generation, people early in career who are chopping and changing jobs all the time. So what is it that makes you resilient to be able to show up like that over so many years?
That was a nice long question, and I think my answer is fairly short. Find something you love and stick with it. And if you don't love it, get out of it. I was fortunate to find technology is something I love doing, and I love the change of technology. So this has been a perfect synergy of me and my passions with a company that is absolutely, and an industry that is rapidly changing. So it's not hard when you've got that. I was doing some mentoring the other day, and a similar question came up. And then it was, well, good probe. What if I find I don't like doing that? What do I do? Well, sometimes you've got to stick with it. You've got to, even though you're not enjoying it, you've potentially had times, as I've had at Microsoft, where I was in a role, I had to stick with it. Stick it out. You made a commitment, honor the commitment. That builds trust and credibility for you to then do that next step, try that next adventure. So some of that resilience actually comes from the pain and working through that difficulty until the time is complete or the task is done, and then finding that next thing that works for you.
That's awesome, mate. Well, a wonderful answer, and so happy that you've found that niche and your passion, been able to stick to it. And Microsoft is such an awesome platform for people who want to have got a passion for technology to be able to use it as a platform and take it to the world. So let's move on to the tech a little bit. What you talked about Build. This is your sweet spot. You got the logos in the background ready to go. So what is some of the coolest innovation you've seen at Build, or you've seen kind of in the last few months? What's happening out there that's blowing your mind?
Well, it's fresh. It's this morning. It's what we're doing across that whole. I commend you to go to YouTube. It's already published the keynote if you want to go and watch it. A couple of things that stick out for me from Build. Tuning. So tuning is this idea that we're adding an agent now that learns from your business's tone and style, so that when you're creating correspondence like a response to an RFP, it automatically absorbs your company's tone and style, rather than just the individual tone and style.
Interesting.
It's now saying our company tone and style. It's looking at the documentation which is sanctioned and approved and labelled as being those sources, and tuning the information to that. Some of the commentary around extending that to third parties was great too. So it's not just a Microsoft-centric world, as much as Microsoft would like to think it was, but to see, Workplace, SAP, ServiceNow, DocuSign, hundreds of vendors up there adopting this agent world and feeding in to the Azure framework. Maybe moving into the infrastructure side, surprisingly, Elon Musk up there. And you go, Elon Musk and Microsoft. Elon talking about the Grok Foundation now as part of the AI Foundation as well is pretty good. What Jensen from NVIDIA talked about in terms of new technology, so the latest technology being in the infrastructure, the size of the Azure platform now being very, very clearly the biggest supercomputer in the planet. And then the stories that came with MedOffice, Stanford Medicine, using that platform to do really important work around better weather prediction, which makes it safer for people to travel, better research into medicine and tumor research in California that spreading into the world. And then the final one I conclude on, because I know I'm going on, is the announcement of Microsoft Discovery. Now it's not a space shuttle, but it's a platform that we're making available to scientists, so that the scientists can do research to find solutions to problems without having to do all of that chemical research work. And the example they gave, I should let you watch it, but it was so cool, where PFAS, all those forever chemicals, which are, we're all, as a sustainable guy, and you're a sustainable guy, and sustainability, they use this platform to find a non-forever chemical to do cooling in the computer room. It was discovered through using that platform. Wow. And instead of using PFAS and forever chemicals, we will start to shift to using this safe compound to now cool the chips inside our facilities. So, and that's not just for us, we used it for ourselves, but we're making that available for others to do that sort of research. That's called Microsoft Discovery.
That's fantastic. That's so awesome. So you mentioned a whole bunch of tech leaders, right? You said Musk and Nadella have been on stage and a whole bunch of other individuals. If you had the opportunity, Phil, to sit down with the coolest tech person in the world and have a chat, have a coffee, perhaps a glass of red wine, who would that be and why?
Oh, the coolest tech person. That's a great one. Because
you can't be yourself, by the way. Can't be
no,
you. Can't be.
Yeah, that's a great question, because I love my history. So that's a really easy one for me. It would be sitting down with one of those Greek philosophers. It would be sitting down with someone like Captain Cook and not maybe Voyage 3, but Voyage 1 and 2, because he had some problems with Voyage 3, getting carried away. But I would go back to having a glass of wine with Bill Gates again.
Okay.
Because I've had a few with him, enjoyed pizzas and time, and I'd be very happy to go back and have another chat with him, particularly now he's on that point where he's giving his money away. That commitment he made 30 years ago when he shared it, he's actually honouring that now, and he's starting to give that money back to community and thinking about sustainable initiatives. So I'd like to see what he's using as technology to identify the key sustainability activities and health initiatives for the planet, and how he's using science and computer technology to achieve that.
Oh, there you go. Well, that's an interview or conversation I'd love to listen into, Phil. Now let's get, where's my blur gone? So let's get a little bit into product for a moment. I was having a conversation with one of your large distributors recently, a large local, you'll know who they are.
I know.
And they were telling me, and I won't share the exact details, but they were articulating the acceleration of Copilot adoption, and even just seen a massive acceleration in the last kind of 30, 60 days. So what's happening that is now, what's been the catalyst, do you think, that's now seen a more rapid adoption of Copilot, and what kind of customers are using it?
Yeah, absolutely. I was part of that review with them only the other week, and the numbers coming through are very clear that Copilot is absolutely zooming up. Where it was used to be 5s and 10s, it's now 50s and 100s that companies are buying. Why? I think it's an understanding, and it's multiple facets to that. Yeah. Firstly, they're seeing in their business the value of using generative AI to solve real business problems and to increase productivity. Then the realization came where they were using non-secure, let's call it consumer grade AI, that it was creating risks for their business. So they then went through that second phase of, hang on, this isn't good. Data's leaking out of our business. We're paying for that service with our data. We've got to stop that. We've got to start doing the Copilot assessments have happened. The sensitivity labeling has been applied. Classification of documents done. We can now have more Copilot licenses. So we're now in that phase where the Copilot licenses, they've taken time to accept what we said all that time ago.
Which is what we wanted, right? That you want that, make sure you got data governance and control, because we've heard all the funny stories about people trying Copilot for the first time and discovering information that perhaps they weren't supposed to see.
I appreciate you saying that, because it's quite right. You know, Copilot, ChatGPT, fantastic company, OpenAI. We use that obviously at the back end of Copilot and many others. But you're quite right. There were mistakes made with Copilot where they didn't put the guardrails in place, and hence everything was discovered by anybody in the business. And you've heard me share those stories of site managers getting lists of female employees under 35 with their phone numbers and mailing it off to their mates. Wow. So that's possible by using Copilot without the guardrails in place. You know, if I may, I think that I'll be interested to see, and there's an individual in that organisation who's right on the vanguard of this. I won't mention his name. He's a lovely chap. He is working in their Dynamics area. And we had a bit of a chat after that review, and he's seen absolutely the use of Copilot Studio now. I don't know if our listeners know what that is, but that's the one that lets you connect in and liberate data out of business systems. It doesn't have to be Dynamics. It can also be SAP. It can be Salesforce. It can be Workday. It can be Pronto. But you'll connect MYOB, connecting and bringing that data into the conversations that people are having in the business. Show me my top 10 customers. What do you predict my top 10 customers will look like in 12 months from now, based on the data that sits in those accounting systems? So that, I think, we'll start to see then move into agents. And that was very much the theme of the build session this morning, is the agentic world. And so many great examples of simple task-based agents to autonomous agents, creating contractor agents, creating RFP response agents that pretty much go and do the work for you. Now, there's the opportunity for our channel. Rather than just selling me a mouse, build me an agent and sell me that, and you as a channel partner can make a heck of a lot more money, and it's not that hard.
Well, that was going to be my question, right? How realistic is that for tech partners to go down that path? You know, we know in the community that we've built, we've got 2 Microsoft MVPs, Robert Crane and Daniel Anderson. They talk a lot about Copilot agents. And so, you know, the typical tech partner out there, let's go for an MSP. You know, I'm 30 employees, I maybe got 1 salesperson, 1 marketer, bunch of technical people. Is that the level of, do you think organizations at that kind of size and competence would be able to go and create agents, individual agents for their customers?
I don't mean to be critical, but I don't think it's a size thing. I think it's a commitment thing. I think even business of 2 and 3 employees, like you mentioned, Daniel and Rob, they're 1-man, 2-man shows, right? And they can go build agents like that. We could go through a list of individual companies out there who've got that talent. I think for a company of 30 employees who doesn't have that skill, find one of those people, hire them into your business. Or at least watch the Build keynote, go to the section about apps and agents right up front, and see how easy it is to click right there in Copilot, chat, create agent, and it steps you through the demonstration that's done to show you how an agent is created. We're not sitting down there with C#. We're not sitting down there with VS Code. We're not having to get into GitHub. There's the ability to do this. If you know how to use Excel VBA, you've got more skills than you need when it comes to creating something with an agent. It's that simple to create an agent.
Yeah, if only there was a channel community that curated these kind of experts, Phil, that could help. Only someone was brave enough to create that. So
somebody who's a cyclist would be a good fit for that. Somebody who's just got back in their bike would be good for that.
Potentially. So we're nearly out of time, Phil. What does the next few years look like for tech partners? You're a tech partner out there, and you want to continue to, you know, be on the right edge of that transformation curve and differentiate in the business. And you know, what's the next couple of years look like, and what advice would you give tech partners?
Let me get my soapbox out. It's the same soapbox I've been using for a long time, right? It's the same soapbox I think you've been on as well. You've got to move from transactional to service.
Okay.
You've got to find a service discipline within inside your business, because that's where the money's at for you as a business in terms of what you charge your clients. And that's where the money is to get out of Microsoft. The show me the money out of Microsoft these days isn't about the margin on selling something. It's the service you do pre-sales and the service you do post-sales. You make a lot more money out of that than just selling our product. So that is my soapbox topic.
Yeah.
Move from transactional to service. And I'm sure, Brad, you've got sections that do talk to the importance of moving from just being a reseller to being a managed service provider.
Yeah, well, that's in the part why I lean towards the term tech partner, right? Because it is a transformation, I think, even beyond being an MSP. What is the modern day tech partner? And you're right, it's a lot more consultative, as a lot of the hard work of implementing technology is now managed by vendors like Microsoft, right? Your differentiation is how you then help your customers proactively consult with them to navigate the technology and get the best out of them. And it's also that proactive engagement we don't see from enough tech partners. So if you're out there, think about how you're actually proactively reaching and sharing demonstrated value to your customers. It's really important. All right, Phil, we're just about out of time. One last question for you, my friend. If you could give the world one bit of guru wisdom, what would it be?
Spend time with your family.
Beautiful, my friend, beautiful. Hey, look, when you leave an organization and you want to move on and do different things, you know, it's an exciting time in your life. But I tell you, one of the hardest things is you miss the people. So Phil, I've missed you, mate. It's been awesome to kind of catch up, and hopefully we get to see each other in person soon.
I hope so too.
Be
safe,
mate. Thank
bye.
you.
See ya.